Whakataki hau ki te uru, whakatakati hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ke uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hau hu, te hei Māori ora. Nau mai hara mai ki te 33rd Annual Public Meeting of the Eastern and Central Community Trust, and thank you so much for joining us online. We had hoped to hold this meeting in Gisborne. However, Gisborne restrictions have called for us to again be adaptable, and the silver lining is we can be more accessible to multiple communities throughout Arohi, which stretches from Tairāwhiti in the north to Featherston in the south and encompasses the Manawatu and Horowhenua to the west. On our agenda today is a short introduction from myself as chair, followed by a presentation on our finances from Hilary Humphrey, our Audit and Risk Chair. Our General Manager, Jonathan Bell, will then discuss our grants, investments, our future next steps, and we have one of our rangatahi rōpū Piripi speaking as well. If you do have questions, please put these in the chat and we will endeavour to answer these at the end of the session. If we can't answer these today, we will address each question and make these available on our website shortly. Ko wai o. Ko tararua ngā paemaunga, ko mangatainoka te awa, ko Ngāti Hāmoa te hapu, ko rangatane roa ko kahanunu ngā iwi, no pahi atua ahau. Ko Morrison, toku whānau, ko Georgina, toku ingoa. So my name is Georgina Morrison and I live in the Green Farming District of Pahi Atua. I've been a trustee on Eastern and Central Community Trust for 3 years and have been recently appointed to the chair role. I work in the environmental sector and serve on a number of community-focused boards. It's a privilege to hold this role, and I work with an amazing group of trustees from around our region. We join a long line of trustees who have been dedicated to working towards stronger, more sustainable communities. We aim to grow our assets to enable us to fund more of the grants that help community projects, programs, and people flourish. We love seeing the outcomes of our grants and know that the real mahi and magic comes from you, our community groups, who are the glue that holds our community together. I'd like to personally thank and introduce our 12 trustees. We have Sarah Paku from Wairoa, Whiti Timu Timu and Rena Kohiri from Tairāwhiti, Levi Walford, who is based in Hastings, Tom Helena from Masterton, Gail Munro from Palmerston North, and Hilary Humphrey from Fielding, who is also a Deputy Chair, and I'd like to extend a note of thanks to Hilary for the knowledge and experience she brings to her role and the personal support she provides me. I'd like to welcome our 4 new trustees who have recently joined us, Josie Willis from Porongaho, Stephanie Malloy based in rural Havelock North, Brendan Duffy and Troy Hobson from Horowhenua. Congratulations on your appointments. It's already great to have you on the trust. The cycle of incoming and outgoing trustees means we farewell David Lee, our Deputy Chair from Pahi Atua, and Shelley Mitchell-Jenkins from Levin, who served as Chair for 5 years. Shelley put so much into the trust, guiding its direction, and the trust has benefited so much from her dedication and hard work. My thanks go to all of you for your commitment to the trust. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge our dedicated staff who are at the heart and engine of what we do and look after our trustees so well. Our grants advisors, Jill and Patricia, our community advisors, Niamal and Rose, Monique, who runs our communications and marketing activities. Supporting the trustees and organisation, we're lucky also to have Michael, Marco, Mike and David, and we appreciate your work. And I want to shout out to our amazing rangatahi rōpū who have worked alongside us this year. You are so inspirational. Lastly, to our General Manager, Jonathan Bell, who competently steers the ship, looks after the crew and keeps us smiling. What a great crew to work with. I'm so lucky to be chair, surrounded by the trustees we have and our fantastic staff. Our team have been extremely adaptable and have met so many challenges head on this year, ensuring that our granting and our community support is continued. Thank you all so much for your mahi and your commitment to ECCT. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Hilary to present the financials.
Kia ora, Georgina. Kia ora koutou katoa, everyone. Ko Hilary Humphrey aho, no kawakawa aho. As Georgina said, I'm the trustee based in Fielding in the Manawatu, and it's my great privilege to have recently been appointed Deputy Chair, as well as being Chair of our Audit and Risk Committee. So going to start just by giving you a little bit of background context to our financial approach. We're an intergenerational investor, and so by law, Eastern and Central Community Trust is required to invest prudently to ensure that we can both make grants to our community each year, as well as future-proofing the value of our investment holdings so that we can continue to make grants in the future. To achieve this, we hold a diverse portfolio of investments, which you can see listed on the slide behind me. Some, such as our bonds and cash holdings, are primarily there to generate short-term returns that ensure we can meet our annual operating costs and annual granting targets. And of course, they also provide a buffer against short-term market volatility, such as we've seen as a result of COVID-19. Our shares and private equity holdings deliver longer-term growth in the value of our investments and our ability to grant in the future. As you can see on the slide, after a number of years of investment, we're now starting to see really good returns on our private equity investments. And the value of our shareholdings has increased substantially in the last year, from 95.6 million to 114.9 million. Next slide, please. So we engage the services of a number of professional managers to look after the different funds in our portfolio, and you can see them listed there. Their individual performance is reviewed on a regular basis by the Trust, and our investment advisor, Michael Chamberlain of Michael Chamberlain Actuary, who's based in Auckland. Mr. Chamberlain also provides regular reporting and advice to the trustees as we monitor and review our investment policies. Next slide, please. So each year's financial performance reflects our total investment income. The income that we realise, which you can see in the top line, is that which we use to fund our annual operating expenses and grants, and with the unrealised funds contributing to the growth of our capital base and reserve holdings. So last year, we made significant gains in our equity portfolios, with 32.9 million of unrealised gains in comparison to the previous year's loss of just over 5 million. In part, that reflects the timing of our accounts in relation to the impact of COVID-19, which has caused a lot of volatility in the market. However, it also reflects our prudent and diversified policy approach, which has seen strong growth in the value of our investments. You'll see that at 3.89 million, our granting for the last year was down significantly from the previous year. COVID-19 meant a number of applicant projects did not proceed as planned. There's also been strong financial support from central government for the not-for-profit and recreational sector, which has meant that a number of organisations who perhaps would normally have come to us were able to source funds from elsewhere. Looking ahead, we've carried forward some of the grant funding from last year to the current year so that some of the delayed capital facilities projects can continue to apply this year. Our total comprehensive income for the year was 33.87 million, which has significantly increased our capital base and reserves and leaves us in a really solid position as we continue to navigate these uncertain times. Next slide, please. So, looking ahead, well, it would be fair to say that we're anticipating ongoing market volatility and low returns on cash and bond investments. So we're continuing to grow our private equity investments and regularly review our investment and grant policies to ensure that we can meet current and future needs. This year, we have updated our requirements to ensure that our fund managers take ethical and sustainability principles into account when making investment decisions. Trustees have also made a periodic inflation adjustment and increased our capital base. So we did this to reflect the population growth our region has seen in recent years and to make sure that we can continue to meet the needs of our community into the future. And with that, I'll hand over.
Kia ora koutou, ko Jonathan Bellaho. Welcome, I'm the General Manager of Eastern Central Community Trust based here in Hastings, Kia ora tonga. I'd like to talk a little bit about the grants, which is the next part of our business. Hilary's explained how we get our money and where it's invested. So the first slide you can see, gives you an overview of where grants were made to different geographical areas of our rohi. This is slightly skewed this year because of COVID-19, and you'll hear that theme coming through in some of the other slides. We monitor that geographical distribution, and over a period of time we try to ensure that our grants are made in a fair and equitable distribution by head of population rather than specifically into those regions. So you'll see that Hawke's Bay is slightly higher than what it would normally be. The next slide shows you where the grants go by sector. A lot of people say we fund a lot of sport. That sport number there also includes the $300,000 which we grant to our regional sports trusts on an annual basis. So they do a little bit more than funding actual games and things like that. They're involved with capacity and capability building within organisations, and not only in the sports sector but also in the recreation sector. It's pleasing to see the education and service numbers, and also health and environment are probably slightly higher than what they have been in previous years. So that just gives you an indication of where it goes. The next slide is a little bit of an overview of the grants that we made. So last year, the board approved $4.2 million worth of grants across 456 applicants. That's lower than budget, and once again, it was the effects of COVID-19. Many organisations took advantage of the different packages provided by central government, and in some cases, the capital works projects for our community assets and facilities fund were delayed and have been postponed, and we're starting to see them coming through now. In total, since 1988, we've made $135 million worth of grants to our region. And if you go to our website, you'll see some examples of who we made grants to. And I encourage you to do that, because it may actually encourage you to apply to us for funding when you see the types of funds that we make. The next slide is a lead-in to the future and what's ahead. And this group of photos here with these lovely people, one of our future speakers will talk to that. So what's ahead? The next slide. Our communities are changing, and so funders need to respond to these changes. So ECCT has listened to its communities in the past and will continue to listen and engage with them in the future. And we also want our funding to have an impact. So what have we been working on? The next slide talks to you about one of the funds that we're developing. It's a strategic fund, and this will enable us to work strategically and build relationships to deliver outcomes for our 4 focus areas, and you'll see them there. So ECC decided our first area of focus was going to be children and young people. So the next slide talks to you about the Rangatahi Action Plan. And so the board agreed to a commitment of $4 million over the next 4 years for funding 2 and 4 rangatahi. So rather than me talking about this project, let's hear from one of the rangatahi involved in this mahi, and I'd like to hand you over to Piripi.
Cool, kia ora, thank you Jonathan, Georgina and Hilary. Kia ora whānau. So before I start, ko wai au, ko wai tēnei, ko Piripi Matawhiora Putini tōku ingoa, huri au no ngā wharere o te tahinga o te rā, ko Ngāti Rā Kai Pāka te iwi, ko Ngāti Kahungunu te iwi whānui, no reira no ngā nuhaka ahau. So kia ora whānau. Yes, my name is Piripi Ruputini. I come from and live in a very small town in northern Hawke's Bay called Nuhaka. I am thankful enough to be one of the rangatahi representatives on Te Rōpū Taiohi for ECCT. And yeah, it's pretty much, yeah, I'm from Nuhaka, and my current occupation at the moment is based in Wairoa. I am the Tihei Rangatahi Coordinator for Kahungunu Executive. So kind of works hand in hand with this type of mahi as well. So this presentation is about our mahi as a rōpū and the partnership between us, Te Rōpū Taiohi, and ECCT developing a strategic plan for rangatahi. And I also will be discussing the process of how everything came to be in our journey to now. So just a little bit more about our rōpū. So we are a rōpū of 15 members plus, another 20 if you know, you know. Hailing from our respective rohe amongst the ECCT region. We all come from big and small, urban and rural communities, but have all experienced the struggle. We are mainly rangatahi Māori and Pasifika youth. We are young parents, people and working in different jobs like at the freezing works and cold stores, hara to the meat works, some youth workers like myself, labourers, high school students, those who have been excluded by mainstream schools, young people and their whānau who have struggled with drugs, alcohol and mental health, isolated geographically in their rohe, whānau and gangs, places that have negative stigma, and they also give us negative stigma because of where we are from. We have faced disadvantage and hardship, however, we are authentic advocates, all passionate about creating transformative change in our communities. So moving on to our next slide, we will be discussing one of our main foundations for this action plan and strategy, which is hearing the unheard. So pretty much one of the young people have said that, or it's quite renowned in the rangatahi development space, that youth voice is not working, is left out of the processes and so not listened to. So explaining the definition behind hearing the unheard is authentically advocating for the right thing to do to give back to our young people. It's also hearing the unheard recognizes the barriers and injustices young people face and gives full credit to young people in regards to power sharing and equitable partnerships. So just in this slide as well, on the right-hand side, we have 4 direct quotes from rangatahi. So the first one is from Wairoa, and this young person said, it's about being so not listened to. We don't even think about what we could do. A young person from Flaxmere, me and my friends, we want to do that, lead, but we know we won't get picked. A young person from Wairarapa, they just listen to young people who are top of the school. They don't know about real life for everyone else. And our last young person from Gisborne, from Te Tai Rāwhiti, get voices of people like me who don't get heard much if you really want to change things. These direct quotes recognise the struggle young people are facing every day and what the rōpū did to hear the unheard and utilise this particular factor in our mahi is connect with the young people, create those relationships and connections amongst all the rohe and utilise those unheard voices to lay a foundation for this action plan. We've also been very strongly on co-leadership, co-design with young people and Eastern Central Community Trust, as well as Rōpū Taiohi, we are all still rangatahi as well. So for and by rangatahi, led by and designed by rangatahi. So a little bit of how we did that. So we had hui, as I mentioned, with local organisations and local youth initiatives amongst our rohe, going to the rangatahi from all communities to gain that information, choosing the strategy so that we are meeting that benchmark and soaring. All of our mahi was gathered kanohi ki te kanohi, obviously with trying to manage restrictions of COVID. We had wānanga, upheld tikanga and had kōrero and hui to reach that benchmark and reach all rangatahi of all colours and creeds. So moving on to our next slide, we will be looking at from the, how would I explain it? From where things are at now to where we want them to be. So the reason behind is that we want to turn this upside down. So we focused on young people who weren't those getting heard. We came together with this whai whakaaro and wanted to make sure that we overbalanced it the other way. So to make sure it's done properly. We keep connected with our local rangatahi and communities throughout the journey. We have focused on being on authentic voices for rangatahi and pretty much redesigning the cycle now, ending an old cycle, creating something new so that there is more equity and more authentic advocacy for rangatahi. So it's led by and for. And that also becomes the partnership of Te Rōpū Taiohi, the young people of all of the rohe that ECCT covers and ECCT as an organisation. So moving on to our next slide is the partnership. So we, as a rōpū, we have designed a partnership model. So here's how we partner. Here's the model on how we partner with ECCT, us as Te Rōpū Taiohi and our rangatahi. So just to kind of make sure I'm making sense, what makes us an equal partner and what point of difference makes this partnership equal and unique? ECCT have given us the forefront. They've been from the very beginning, they've given and implemented very strong whakaaro of co-leadership, co-design. We lead this, we make our recommendations, and there we go. ECCT has had no expectations of us. They were always happy with what we created and there were no clashing of values. They've listened to our needs and wants. They came to our wānanga and had a kai at the marae and really got involved, upheld tikanga. And in some places, they've been able to connect to initiatives on a local level as well. They've given their full support to us with no expectations. And all of our mahi was aligned with our values and the action plan, which I'll be touching on very soon. I'm trying to make sure I don't take up too much time. So ECCT partnering with young people, aka us, was in my opinion definitely different at first to get used to, because this kind of process is what we dream to have as young people and do as youth workers and rangatahi, but now it's a reality with our mahi and information now to back us up on, and the ECCT board has our backs fully. So moving on to our next slide. So how we did it. Oh, there we are. Oh, that is our beautiful pikitia. So how we did it. So at the centre is the rōpū of us Taiohi, who came together 1st in October 2020, bringing our own ideas and whakaaro rangatahi from our communities. Our approach is focused on creating a safe space for Taiohi and rangatahi to speak up and voice their opinion. This meant being flexible, coming together to wānanga, going out and supporting each other in our respective rohe and trying to be true to the rangatahi in our different localities. We ran workshops, had conversations and met up with lots of rangatahi organisations across the rohe, as I mentioned before, reaching all colours and creeds of rangatahi. Our discussions evolved after each wānanga as our whakaaro shifted. We explored how rangatahi felt supported in their communities, what kinds of opportunities were accessible, how they saw their futures, and what changes they would like to see. Once again, reiterating the co-leadership and co-design. We took our ideas back to rangatahi in different communities so the action plan was connected to their whakaaro authentically and they could have their say as it started coming together. So as I mentioned before, moving on to the next slide, I will be touching base on our values and our action plan, which has been the main core for all of our mahi. In order for our rōpū to stay true to our tasks and remain accountable to our communities, we had to align our vision with our aspirations and values. Our overall vision is to build safer, more inclusive and connected communities, and for us to thrive and be heard in. From this then shaped our aspirations and then opened up the floor for us to flesh out the underpinning values that our rōpū will adhere to going forward. So our first value, so this is our beautiful, in short, our action plan put into a beautiful tamanui te rā. Moving on to the first value, which is mana taurite. This value is about social justice. It's about recognizing and acting on the inequalities we face. It's about ensuring that the actions we take contribute to reducing and eliminating these inequalities and inequities. We want to ensure that we are equipped with the same support and resources as any other, not just having a duty to consult with rangatahi on development, but to actually involve us throughout the process. Our second value is manaakitanga. This principle is about respecting and nurturing us as rangatahi. We want all our rangatahi to feel valued and to know that their contribution, big or small, is invaluable and that they can indeed have an impact on their communities. Showing manaaki by supporting our rangatahi to be creative and encourage innovation helps us all to seek the new, gives permission to explore young people's ideas and dismantle old narratives and reconstruct the new. So utilizing old narratives and using that whakaaro and that kōrero to construct new pathways for future success. If you have been shown manaaki or manaakitanga, then you should feel as if you've been nurtured, cared for, respected, and valued. That in itself will help a person or rangatahi feel as though they are an integral part of their community. So moving on to our third value, tuakiri. So this principle is about empowering and enabling our rangatahi to express themselves freely. If our rangatahi are being nurtured, supported, resourced, and valued, they then should be able to and be willing to express who they are, both as an individual and as an active member of our communities, free of any judgment or prejudice. In short, freedom of identity. This principle relates to tino rangatiratanga, not only within one's community, but within themselves. If someone has been shown manaaki within the community, then they should feel comfortable in expressing themselves as a valued individual. They should feel safe and free to express their personality, opinions, ideologies, concepts, strategies, etc. So following our fourth value, kaitiakitanga, our rangatahi If our rangatahi's disparities have been decreased or better yet eliminated, have been shown manaakitanga, feel valued in our communities, are open to express confidently and freely who they are, then our rangatahi should feel as though they are a kaitiaki of their community, for the community is a reflection of the whānau within it. They will then inherently showcase these values within their community to then empower and build other kaitiaki of our communities. And lastly, is our overarching value of whakapapa. So we want to build stronger and sustainable communities. We want to realize what connects us to our community, and that is our whakapapa. All of these principles that I've just briefly touched on before have all been guided and connected by an overarching principle of whakapapa. So we may not necessarily have been born and raised in these communities, but if these values are inherent within it, then the sense of ownership and whakapapa to this community will be present. People within a strong and sustainable community are grounded within the community because they feel as though it is their whakapapa. I am a product of my environment and surroundings, which is my community, my whakapapa. I want to develop my community based because of the connections and relationships I have within it. I don't only live within this community, but I am the community's life force itself. In short, I am my community and my community is me. So moving on to our next slide, this is a bit of our values of our action plan, I want to touch base on our youth-led funding. So as a result, throughout our process of designing the rangatahi action plan and designing all the stuff that came with that mahi, we were also given 50,000 for this year, and we have finished using it as it was so successful. In brief, we have approved at this time, I believe it's around 24 to 30 something applications, sorry for the inaccuracy, since from right across the rohe, the uptake of the youth-led grants has been quick. This is unusual for youth-led funding, which can typically take a while to get going. The Te Rōpū Taiōhi will evaluate the success of the youth-led fund in the next wānanga and make changes as needed to the process, so making sure our mahi is keeping current and keeping ourselves updated. Some of the things we have funded are Young Wahine Skate Group, a social event for the Rainbow Youth community, a youth-led business focused on promoting Te Reo Māori through stickers, Auj Mana Motu Hake, a kaitiaki project for the environment, a youth mental health project, a koha coffee project, a women's sports festival idea, film workshop, beauty and barber day, refugee youth sports events, Noho Marae to reconnect youth forum to address discrimination, and young hine empowerment. Empowering our young kōtiro Māori, and still many, many more projects to come and support. So moving on to our next slide, I hope I've filled you all on a lot of information. So pretty much wrapping it up from here. So the next steps from here is our Rōpū in partnership with ECCT, our beautiful pikitea Aotearangi and Ahuriri. Next steps from here, so our action plan, as I mentioned before, is finalised and ready to go. We're now moving into the implementation of what that looks like as a Rōpū and seeing how it will work with organisations in the ECCT region. We have also, as Jonathan touched on, the $4 million deal with a funding plan led and designed by us, with the board backing us up on that. Continuing our mahi onwards, the Rōpū will be leading how the money is spent with the board support. Shout out to our GM, our chair, and all of the lovely staff of ECCT and the trustees, and how this multi-million-dollar opportunity has been delegated, which will be put out to the public very soon. But anyways, hei whakakapi taku kōrero, nei rā te mihi nui kia koutou katoa, koe hui hui mai ki tēnei kōrero, pāna ki te whakarongo i tōku whakaaro. No reira, tēnā koutou. Very much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Piripi. That was fantastic. I think that people don't realise the amount of work that the group that have been working, the Rōpū Taiōhi, have been working together. It's been over the last 15 to 18 months. They've put a lot of time and effort into it. They're very, very passionate about it. And we're very comfortable working with them. And I think the key thing is that sharing of power, which is something that the trust has done. Piripi mentioned the youth-led fund, the $50,000. It may not have been clear to you, but those are for youth-led, youth-initiated, youth-managed projects. And the Rōpū actually make the decisions on who gets the grants. We don't, they do it. And that's a major step forward for a funder to be able to do that, to allow something like that. Piripi has summed up 18 months work in about 12 minutes. And what I recommend you do is go to our website and have a look at some of the documents that he was referring to. They're all there. It's a really neat project, and it's something that we as a funder are really, well, we're extremely proud of, and we're looking forward to working with them in the next 4 years. So that was the strategic fund and one area that we've been working on. The next fund that we're developing is our innovation fund. This will fund initiatives that are community-led and community-driven, and hopefully it will develop new solutions with the impact to deliver impact and support key grant makers in our communities. I sometimes refer to this as the risk fund. This is taking a punt on our communities and providing them with some funding to try new things. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't matter, because the community will learn during the process of what they're trying to achieve. And finally, my last slide. Looking further into the future, we want to connect more with our communities, listen to them, and then respond accordingly. Lastly, over the past 12 to 14 months, we've updated our trust deed, and there have been 2 key changes. Firstly, our acknowledgement and commitment to Te Tiritio Waitangi, and also more flexibility in where we can invest our funds, especially in areas for social impact, things like social loans and the like. That's it from me. I'd now like to hand back to Georgina. Kia ora.
Thank you so much to our presenters today and to those attending online, especially to all of our community champions. Ngā mihi. We'll close today's meeting with a karakia. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki a ehu karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga ngā tahitanga, ki te wairoa tapu, aki, aki, aki amene. Ngā mihi kia koutou, go well and take care.